Hello and welcome to my Florida studio. My name is Mara Trumbo and today I would like to invite you to come and visit my private beach with me. I learned this fun technique from PBS artist Brenda Harris and I have readapted it to many of my own designs. Rocky Beach is painted on a 16 by 12 canvas, but you can enlarge the pattern to fit any size you like. Mark off the horizon line at 5 inches, leaving you 7 inches for the sky. Using a low-tack tape, which is made specially for artists, draw this across below the horizon line and get your paints ready. We're using Prussian blue, cerulean blue and white. So let's get started. Using your flat background brush or the biggest you have in your box, use crisscross strokes and start from the corners of your canvas and not forgetting to paint the top and the sides. I often do this with stretch canvases or gallery wrap canvases as they're called, because it avoids you having to frame it for an exhibition and leave the choice of frame to your potential customers instead, and it looks pretty all the way around if your design carries over. So the crisscross stroke is to ensure that every single thread in your canvas is covered, whereas if you paint across as if you're painting a wall in your house, doesn't necessarily cover all the threads. So crisscross, and if you can, try and do the top of the sky all in one operation. This is a wet on wet technique, and the paint should be fresh when altering the choice of your colors, going from dark to light. And if you wait until it's dried or halfway dry, it becomes a little tacky and sometimes it lifts the paint up. So you either do wet on wet pretty quickly, or you do wet on dry and wait until the first color is totally dry before applying the second one next to it, and then blending the two bands of colors in between. What you don't want to see are rainbows of distinct colors coming across, starting from dark and going on to medium and going down to light. You want the colors all to merge into one another. So quite often, although you get lighter going down to the horizon, once in a while I pick up a dark color and streak it in as well. And as you can see, my brush disappearing around the corners and on the top. This canvas will be painted while I've got that shade on my brush, because if you try and do it afterwards, it doesn't often match the same color or hue that you have used. So if you do it while you have that color on your brush, I also blend the colors and run it across, not only to just remove the paint marks. Sometimes when you press the brush pretty heavy, it leaves an impression on the canvas and on the color. So at the end you want to go right across it and smooth those little lines over. The paint will be well settled by that time, so it's really not going to move, and that way if your brush is losing some hairs, like one of my new ones is doing now, you can also remove them that way. So the colors, as I mentioned above, was a Prussian and cerulean blue mixed in with the white, which makes it lighter in the middle and towards the horizon. Then at the very bottom of the horizon, I am blending in some darks as in purple. I love purple skies, and this is one good way of incorporating my favorite color in. So it's going to go in right at the bottom before the clouds get put in. I often paint clouds at the same time as I'm painting the sky, but on this one it'll be done different. So the actual background will be done wet on wet, and then the clouds will be done wet on dry once this is done. So here I am just shaking out any of those little marks there and any of those loose hairs and adding little bits and pieces here and there. And of course, when I paint skies, I could go on for hours. To me, it's one of the most fascinating subjects to paint. I would love to do a few canvases just with skies. In fact, I often do after a class when I have lots of leftover paint. I just take out a blank canvas, paint a sky on it, and then when inspiration hits, I go through my canvases and see what I'm going to put on top of it. So we now finished the background. We're going to let this dry, and if you haven't got patience to wait for it to dry naturally, go get your hair dryer. Remember to hold the dryer 6 to 8 inches away from the canvas. You don't want to burn your paint, and you also don't want to blow up the electrical circuit. So let's start with the clouds. These are going to be done with a stiff fan brush, and I prefer stiff in this case because I really want to work them into the canvas. It's going to be like 2/3 creamy white, it's called warm white, and 1/3 burnt sienna. And I'm sorry, my camera is just slightly off range of the top, and I didn't realize it until I started editing this film, but there'll be plenty of clouds for you to see. And what I'm doing here is I hold 2 brushes on my hand, sometimes even up to 5 in my hand, and I switch from one to the other. And this is a flat brush with just water on it, nothing but water. And what I'm doing is I'm just softening the bottom. Instead of using a mop brush, I'm using a hard brush because I want to work the paint in, as I mentioned. So I'm switching from my fan to spread the cream and the sienna color, and then I'm going with my flat brush to just dissipate that color at the bottom into the sky. So it's a little speeded up portion here, only because I'll be painting so many clouds you'll get tired of watching. So this film has been fast and forward for about 50%. I think I've put it on 1.5, but I'll slow it down to real time when I paint some of the closer clouds so that you can see exactly how I do it. Basically, I use the 2 corners of the brush. The one corner with the white goes in first and makes a shape of the cloud, and then underneath I'll go in with the sienna, which is now turning a beigey color because it's mixing with the white. And I prefer it to be a little bit lighter to start with. You can always strengthen the colors afterwards, go over it a second time. And here comes my little wet brush, my little friend. The 2 of them work in tandem, and they get on quite well in my brush box as well as on the canvas. So that's real teamwork between the 2 of them. That's another one of my favorite subjects, of course, is clouds. I used to paint just billowing little clouds when I first learned to do the Bob Ross technique. And I was so proud of them. And then I realized not all clouds are shaped the same, like people. So you learn different ways, different techniques of doing them. And I love painting them in both acrylics and in oils. And a lot of people find it difficult in acrylics, but you know, once you get the hang of the acrylic, it's not as frightening as it seems at the beginning. Everybody thinks, oh, but it dries so quickly. Yes, it does, but you can extend it with a little bit of water. You can dampen your canvas if you like. You dampen your brush. You can put a little bit of extender liquid with the paint. I prefer to just work as quickly as I can, but if you feel more at ease doing it in slow time, then by all means use an extender. So here I am. This is real time now, okay? I'm going to go much slower on this film to show you how I do my clouds. And there's no rhyme or reason in the shapes. It's just whatever I feel like. And that's the beauty of it. If anybody ever asked me to duplicate a painting, I could never ever do it because it comes straight from the heart and my imagination. So no 2 will ever be alike. So here I'm adding on a little bit more of the sienna at the bottom and smudging it in. What you want to do is you don't want to see a hard line except for the top where the sun is hitting it. You want to see that silver lining, yes. But at the bottom you always want it to merge in. Also, if I feel there's too many little clouds, one after the other, I blend the 2 to become one large one like I'm doing now. So that's getting married to the one above. And then as they come down closer to the horizon, I zigzag my brush and I go more streaky like than round little clouds. They're more like streaks on the horizon. And here I am again with a dry brush now and just pushing those little lines along. And that little corner could do with another one. I'm trying to get out of the camera's way, and it's pretty difficult when you're doing your own filming. So I'm going to have to go around and come out the other side and just touch it up. So I'm painting upside down and back to front, and you've heard the saying, sometimes less is more, and perhaps I shouldn't get this little cloud to get too big or it's going to take over all the other ones. So that's enough, Mara. Lift up your brush, go back to the bottom and have a look and see what it looks like from the front. And you often have to walk away from your painting before you do too much damage. Did you hear me? Get off that brush. Oh, if my husband was here, he'd be just saying just that. He said I would love my paintings to death, and it was true, because sometimes it was just perfect before I decided to touch it last little bit, and then I would kill it. So this is just some more of the little lower clouds at the horizon, just done with the flat brush, tap, tap, tap along the sky with some of the creamy warm white, and tinted sometimes with a little bit of raw sienna. Now these clouds can all be touched up afterwards. When they're completely dry, we can go over with a wash of gold and a little bit of lilac at the bottom if you like, but I wouldn't advise doing it now because you have lots of colors to still go in on the sea. So time to remove the tape, and look at that, beautiful. None of it seeped underneath, and if it did, it wouldn't matter because the sea is going to be dark. So now reposition the tape above where it's already dry. Make sure those clouds are dry before you put the tape back on again. And yes, I'm using the same old tape, as you can see. Nothing wrong with that. I believe in recycling. So make sure that it's dead on. You don't want to see a little white line over there. In fact, you could even go teensy bits over just to make sure that the two blues meet. And you're going to start painting the sea. Of course, we're using the same colors again, the Prussian blue, the very distant deep water. But before we start that, we've got to trace a pattern. I do mine freehand, but I have made a pattern for you here. So the distant sea is going to be painted first. So we're going to start with the Prussian blue at the very end. And that's very dark. It almost looks like black when you first put it on until you touch it with the other colors, and then all of a sudden it becomes very vibrant. So there's a rock there on the way which goes beyond the tape, so you can either go over it since the colors of the rock are very dark anyway, or you can just skip it as I'm doing now. So afterwards we're going to pick up a little bit of cerulean blue in the same brush that you had the Prussian blue on, so the two will start merging in between. Never have flat lines, because otherwise it looks weird. And so you want to, after you've put the color down, go back and forth between them, so that they form a gradual lightening coming forward or darkening going backwards. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of white with the cerulean blue, and going to start putting in some waters that are rushing through into the spills. So the water here is very rough, so you're going to see some movement in the water. The best way of doing it is by a cradle motion. You see my hand forming like a U upside down. You don't want obviously very high waves, but just by doing back and forth, it gives you a visual effect that there's a stirring sea behind it. And then, of course, later on we're going to put the highlights of the water sparkles on top, little lines with white. But this is good enough in the meantime. Now we're going to tint the base color of the spills. And I'm picking up both the Prussian and the cerulean blues on my brush and just bringing them down. And it's a curved reverse C, as it were, or a number 7, like I do with waterfalls. In order for my students to understand me, I say you're painting a number 7. You come across and then down, and of course reverse on the other side. So that is your base color. Then with a rake or a comb brush and thinned white, you would go on top. You don't want a clumpy loaded brush. You want it very soft so that the spill looks natural. And again, a curved stroke coming down. You must be able to still see the blue behind it. If by mistake you've picked up too much white, then we can correct that and fix the back, make it even. Now while I've got the white and the light blue on my brush, I'm just making some water lines at the back. Again, cradle motion. And then going to the other spill, again coming down. And it's a little bit crooked, of course, because I'm trying to do it from the other side and my vision isn't all that good from an angle. And tidy up the top of the spill there. And now we're going to go for the eye of the wave. I'm using a flat brush with yellow green light and also some warm white, and this is to create an illusion of light filtering through the water, and the middle section should be lighter where the white is, and then slowly diminish as you come round. And this almost makes it look transparent, and it's a beautiful effect done by a lot of artists in both acrylic and in oils. And I'm going very light with the color here, but of course it's your choice if you want it a little bit stronger there, depending on the color of the sky sometimes, the sunset, how vibrant they are. You may add the colors of that's actually reflected in the sky as well. You could have put in a little bit of blue in it. And a blue will actually reflect here from the shadow we're putting where the foam will be above it. So we're going to put a line of blue, and I am wiping my brush when you see it disappearing. We want to remove the excess blue and then work it into the green, and this will create a shadow of the water coming through, and the spume will be coming over it. That's those white caps, the foam that comes on top there, and at the bottom of the spill when the water hits the bottom of the ocean floor. So now we remove the tape, we can see the sea and joining the horizon there. It's a nice clean line, and what you want to do now is with a very, very sharp flattened brush, just on the chisel, you're putting tiny little white lines. You're not going to see waves or caps or heavy foam at the distance, so it's got to be very tiny little lines at the back, which gradually become big as you come closer, and your hand can also start curving them, so you're doing a cradle rocking brush stroke there. If it comes out too heavy, you can soften it with your finger or with a brush. If it goes into the blue while it's still wet, even greater. If not, you can always add some more colors in between if you feel the contrast between the dark blue and the foreground is too much. There's always adjustments done during a painting. It's never right the first stroke. So now we're going to be bringing in some of the shadows on the falls, or the spills as they are called. I'm loading with Prussian blue again, and for the foam to actually show, once you'll be putting that on with a stipple brush or a mop brush or a stencil brush, for the white to show, it has to have a dark background, just like when you're painting waterfalls. So here I'm using what's left on my brush of that blue to create one of those surges that create the wave. The ocean, as you know, has pulls and pushes. It pushes the waves out onto the shore. The water then retracts and pulls back into the sea. So it's a constant movement. And as it comes closer to shore, of course, the deep blue waters become more greenish. That's the color of the sand underneath on the shallow parts as well. So I'm alternating between green and blue here. But remember to make your strokes more diagonal, and I'm adding some white here because some of them will carry foam back with them, and then of course we'll accentuate that later on with liner brushes. But always go diagonal, never go straight, and in a zigzag fashion, and this will give you the movement of the water. It may not be realistic, but it's definitely a nice look to your painting. I had one teacher at one time saying, I love your seascape, but where on earth do you get those waves coming and going in every direction? I said, have you ever seen a tsunami? Well, she hadn't, nor had I actually, but that picture got accepted. I love painting from my imaginations, but at times, yes, I should study Mother Nature and see that things are going the actual right way. And so here, I'm darkening the back there where that white canvas is showing, and putting a little bit more shadows in there. So this is where the push meets the pull. With a little brush, I'm actually going to pull some of those drags going upwards, and that's a washback going up into the wave, returning some of the water it has dropped down. And I'm doing it in various colors. There I've got a very light blue going up. You don't want those lines to look too harsh. And then I'll accentuate them afterwards and make them different lengths, not all the same. And again, they'll be curved in the shape of the wave, and there'll be little arms coming off, almost like varicose veins. The water splits and makes little rivulets. So those are the ones that are going up, and then we'll have some that are coming down, and of course those are dictated by the law of gravity. We'll put those once we've got the foam on, because I need to attach them to the spume on top. We're now going to paint the spume, which is the foam formed by the waves, and which will also show afterwards the drips coming down in the opposite direction. So with a little deer foot brush or a stippler or a whatever little brush you have that makes nice little bushes, this will be the ideal dot that forms. If they're too similar, turn the brush around. You don't want to have just tiny little balls there, so change your shape somewhat, but you do want them to look foamy. So little, and they will now form the rivulets falling down. That is water that's being returned by the wave, and it's coming from that spume on top. And we're going to do that in white because in the higher part there's more light, so they'll be in white, whereas the ones coming from the bottom are bluish and green. And again, these look like veins in a leaf, or veins on your legs. Done in a curved shape, again taking the shape of the eye of the wave. And once you've done that, walk away from your painting, take a look and see what else needs doing. We might accentuate some of the ones going up, putting a little bit of highlights on those light blue ones, where they're also catching the light in the center of the eye there. And split some of these up as well at the bottom. The water does funny visual effects there. As I say, it's going to and from every which way, so there's no right and there's no wrong. Enjoy yourself with your brush. If you notice the foam on that wave, it's changed its shape slightly. That's because my brand new deer foot was too stiff, and I was getting the exact same rubber stamp image of round little snow caps almost. So I've experimented a little bit with the fan brush, and I'll be correcting it later on. You'll see me doing it. I just want that foam to be more foamy. Now for the rock on the beach. This is a fun technique that I've learned by using a cut-up credit card, and I don't use credit cards anymore. I use my hotel guest cards or my gift cards, and I pick up some of the colors instead of using a palette knife in here, and I'll be using both to show you. This is a cheaper way of doing it, and I find it much more manageable, and my students think so too. You can get hold of the colors just on the very tip and manage the card much easier than you would a palette knife. So we start the rock with the lighter colors. As the sun hits it on top, there'll be the yellow and the orange hues coming down to the sienna, the umber and the blues. And hold that brush every which way, so you're doing some diagonal strokes, as long as the tiny little ones, because you want it to look like a rough rocky surface. In fact, here you could even use a thickener on your paint and put some 3D dimensions on it. And so we're doing some horizontal, some vertical, some diagonal strokes here, and I'm picking up colors from the palette now with a small trowel palette knife. This is one of my favorite ones for size. I also have the very big one, which I use for making snow on mountains, like our friend Bob showed us. But these little ones to get into tight little corners are best. So when the sun hits a rock, you will have lighter colors, and there's a little ledge there or a table in that rock. So I've put some more of the golden yellow there, and then where it drops again into a little cliff, the darker colors will make the dimensions stick out. At this stage, it looks like an ice cream with lots of my favorite flavors there, but get off the Food Network and get back onto the painting. So you can touch and add some of the colors everywhere. So rocks have little crevices and little holes in them, and weeds and all sorts of things, incrustations growing on them, some seashells. So you can have real fun making this rock in the middle of your beach. Also, it doesn't have to be the shape of the pattern. You're free to change it and make it larger, make a couple of them, one next to the other. So the sun also shines, don't forget, at the sides of the rock because it's behind it. So make the sides a little bit more orangey and yellow, and then the back much darker. But have fun with the colors. More often than not, I use my leftover colors on the palette, and I have a whale of a time creating all sorts of marble mountains and fun pieces. And as I said, if you use texture paint, it's even much more fun. And you can use it underneath clear and then paint it on top, or you can actually mix it in with your colors. So there's your rock. Easy enough, right? So just leveling it off at the bottom where the water is going to come around it. And if it's not perfect, it's okay. We'll just cover it up with a few waves. And this has got to be thoroughly dry before you try anything else around it. So if you're wanting to do this painting in a day, I suggest when you get to this stage, you either use a hairdryer or make the rock the last thing in the evening, and so you can have your dinner and go to bed, and in the morning it'll be dry. A lot depends on the thickness of how much paint you use as well. So because my palette is still full of burnt sienna and yellow oxide, I decided to paint the beach. I have double loaded my large brush with the burnt sienna going to go under the last wave coming in, and that'll create a nice shadow. And the sandy color yellow oxide on the outside. Then just mishmash the two and fill up the sand. If you prefer it a little bit lighter, you can add some warm white as well. But this is a good way of creating depth on the smaller waves, tide waves coming on shore. So we continue here, and we're going around only where it's visible from the point you're looking at. So in other words, that little inlet in there that you see will only be visible from this side, the shadow, not on the upper part. So I've omitted going totally around it. And I'm going over to the other side of the canvas and again filling in the sand. And I'll use a smaller brush when it gets to going around the starfish. So because you're painting on a gallery wrap canvas, as I mentioned, this is the time you want to lift it and paint the bottom and the side of it with the exact same shades that are on the sand, because to try and match it afterwards is always a little bit harder, so you might as well do it now. Here we are, ready to go. Ready to paint the tide swells slowly coming onto the shore and falling very softly on the sand. Well, start loading up your palette with cerulean, blue, yellow, green light, and titanium white. They're going to be very pastel and very soft. So we're going to start with a flat brush, double loaded. I'm going to pick up both colors, the blue and the green, and side load the white. And we're going to hold the white against the the drawn lines that indicate the wave coming on shore with the darker color inward. And then you just pull some of those colors back. And if you do it in a zigzag fashion, you're going to have some green coming out in parts, some blue on the other, and it's quite okay. We're going to accentuate afterwards the white. If it doesn't show up enough now, don't worry. We'll be adding highlights and shadows. This little inlet I mentioned earlier will probably be a little bit more green because of the sand underneath. And normally I would also put a few of the sky colors in to reflect on the sand, but we don't want to get too complicated on this one. So the blue and the green and the white will do the effect we are after. Later on we'll add more shadows and, as I mentioned, more highlights, but we just need to cover the canvas now, get all that white out of the way. And you're holding your brush flat and you going sideways. That's the easiest way of doing it. Please don't hold your brushes at 90 degrees painting with the tips. I see so many times hard lines in paintings because students can't get the hang of holding a brush at 45-degree angle and actually putting pressure on the sides of the brush and not the tip of the brush. It also preserves the life of your brushes much longer if you do it that way. And they'll always have a beautiful chisel. So zigzag, zigzag to show the water movement, like little waves in between the big waves. And of course you're getting a lot of colors in between. The green is mixing with the blue and it's mixing with the white. So here I'm going to go for a deeper blue color because that rock is in shadow. And of course later on we'll also add shadows onto that, but we want the darker blue water behind it. And a little bit more green and blue mix, and don't forget the sides of the canvas again. Bring it next to the rock. Add a little bit more blue in the background and bring it in. Zigzag it in. So you don't want straight lines all the time. You want to zigzag them, and that way the colors also blend much better. So it's beginning to take shape. It's already pleasant to the eye. That little starfish is wondering what's going on. Everything is being painted around me except me. Well, your turn will come soon, honey. So just adding a few little lines that are not even on the original pattern, and you're welcome to change the shape as well to your liking. So with a round brush, I'm going to roll that brush so that it deposits the paint harder on the outside than on the inside. And you want to leave that ledge to be heavier than what you're going to be bringing out with a rake or comb brush. So you're raking the back portion back, leaving the front highly visible like that. And of course, when you're raking it, you're doing it slightly sideways. You don't want to go straight back. Softly, softly. And here's another overlapping wave. Now don't make the white too heavy, otherwise the foam is going to look too rich there. These are gentler waves than the ones behind. Of course, that wouldn't happen in that shorter time. There'll be some other ones in between, but since we're painting on a small canvas, we've gone from large to small, missing a few sizes in between. But I'm sure Mother Nature will forgive me. Make sure when you come round the edge on the outside, you don't cover up too much of the shadow color, otherwise you'll have to replace it afterwards. Get into the habit of painting with two brushes in your hands. The speed in which you paint, of course, is everything in acrylics, because if you wait too long, the paint will dry and you're not going to get that blended effect. It'll look added on, appliqued, as it were. So here again, I'm twisting the brush, and you see that little tiny little rim on the outside. You want to leave that. And then just gently, gently bring the others in. Now, don't bring the white all the way back to the end. You always want to have that dark contour underneath that's forming a shadow. It is blue at the moment. Later on, we'll reinforce it with a little bit of purple. And if you do accidentally use too much white, just pick up some of the green and some of the blue, like I'm going to be doing now. There's too much white on that one, so a little bit of green on that side, and then a little bit of blue on this side here, and we'll reshape it. Easy fix. Just a last few touches, and then we'll move the canvas to do the side on the left. So before we leave, actually, we've got to do the water by the rock. That's more turbulent than the one coming on shore, so we're going to do stronger lines in there. There's a lot of white on the edge as well as going around the rock. Excuse the picture slightly out of focus. Again, I didn't realize it until he got around to editing the movie. And once it's painted, it's hard to do it again, second motion, so you can still see the gist of it. Now here I'm actually doing something that I hadn't planned on doing. This to me looks like a rollover wave. So I'm going to let it be just that. I'm going to add some more extra white here for foam, and put some blue at the back, and it'll look like another little wave coming on shore behind the rock. It's a little bit too white at the moment, so I'm going to pick up some more blue and work it in. Again in a rocking motion. And take it back. This is the fun of these paintings. Sometimes accidents happen, and as Bob Ross used to say, the happy accidents are never mistakes. So you just go with the flow, literally. In this instance, you're in the water, and just make it into something else. So some more water rifting around, and then we'll put the spray on later on. Okay, so over to the left now. We're getting closer to the little starfish, doing some more of the waves that are not going to reach it quite, not until low tide, high tide anyway. So again, if the white is too harsh, put a little bit of blue there and knock it back. And here I'm changing the line a little bit. It was too straight, so I've made it slightly curved. And you're welcome to do that. You know, there's total freedom. In my workshops, I just like to teach you the technique, and you can make the changes that any change you like along the way. So this is another little wave that while I was in the middle of making it, gave me inspiration to do something else with it. There it was, just minding its own business, and then Mommy saw a little something in the back there, and I decided, well, you know, it could look like another little fall coming down or another spill, so we'll make it into one. I'm still fidgeting with it while I'm thinking. And here it goes. Down it comes, over the little green bump. It's a little miniature fall. So I'm going to fix it back again with a little bit more blue because there's too much white there. Then bringing it down. And again, too much white, so this is the way you fix it. You put a little bit of blue at the end and walk it backwards. And then I decided instead of being two separate waves, maybe there'll be one joint on top there. So I'm taking my liner brush again and bringing it down to join up with the other one. See how easy it is? And as I said, sometimes whatever happens is dictated by circumstances. Another little one here. That's a little sun puddle, and I'll put some shadows behind it. Time to fix a spume now. The spray that's around the big wave and around the other side. So I've squashed my little brush a little bit more so that the hairs open up and don't give me the rubber stamp effect, and it's much better now. I'm still treating very softly because I don't want each pattern to look identical. And going up here, it's doing exactly that, and I'm seeing like a little lacy pattern there, so no problem. I'm going to wet my flat brush and clean it off. So just work it in, and bring it round. So here you could also use a wet brush to diffuse the colors in the background and make it like we did with the clouds, to make it a little bit more misty, like sea spray. There's lots of ways of doing it, and of course the effects are very different from one to the other. But this is what was on the original pattern, so I'll carry on doing it this way. So it's pat, pat, pat in irregular motions. You don't want them to be in a little straight line like little soldiers. Diminished as it comes around at the end here. Higher on the top edge. You can even put little splatters around if you wish with a toothbrush, but be very careful you don't hit everything. You'd have to cover the rest of the paintings. And then splatter with your toothbrush and immediately follow with a clean up wet brush afterwards. So now we did say there was lots of spray hitting that rock, and here it comes. We're loading up the brush again, coming down at the bottom of this spill, enriching that one, and then it's going to hit the side of the rock and the top of the rock. And the other side, and it's going to be all around, and it'll spill over, the water will spill over to the back side as well. So we'll be doing that next, and this is all done with a deerfoot brush. And if you smudge it a little bit there, it doesn't really matter, because it's going to have little rivulets coming down where the water finally descends again into the sea. And some of it will come around the corner and on the other side. You can go lightly at first and always go back for a second or third time. Just don't plaster it on too thick at the beginning, thinking you can do it all in one operation, because then you will lose the see-through effect and the beautiful fine spray effect that it does if you're doing it slower and with thinner paint. And always pounce that deerfoot brush on your palette before you put it on the canvas, because you may have picked up too much and it'll look too heavy. And talking of heavy, these are the rivulets coming down when they hit the rock that's round at the bottom or flat. Please make sure that the rivulets take the same shape. That's how the water would follow going back into the sea. So you attach them to the foam on top and bring them down, very much like the veins on a leaf, and like driplets of rain down your windshield when you're driving. Well, when you're not driving, when your car is stationary, because if you're driving you won't see them this way. You'll have your windshield wipers on. So don't ask me how many should be going in. A lot of students do, and there's never a right or a wrong amount. Just when there's too many, it's going to look too much. That's all I can say. And this one looks pretty rich, so I should really be stopping just about now, but I'm carrying on because I get excited and because I want to show you a little bit more. And what happens then is that it looks overworked. But that's not a big issue, because you can go back with a light wash of the yellow oxide and or even the burnt sienna, and subdue them a little bit in the back. So if there's too many there, you can leave some still very white, and some others you just wash them into the background. Now, as the waves overlap one another, they create shadows. And in order to make this more defined, we are going to go with a double-loaded brush with my favorite color, purple, but very, very diluted, and the other side, nothing but clean water. This is called side loading, and it's taught by the decorative arts, and I love this technique. Now this is very, very light, so you may find it hard to see it at the beginning. I'm going to strengthen it a little bit, and where it hasn't blended well enough and I see a distinction between the purple and the water, then I just smudge it with my finger to make it come out until it fades. So you want the dark side to be directly underneath that white highlight we put in earlier. And see how it makes them pop out. And I'm going to go a little bit stronger here, I think, with the color. So purple is normally your shadow color. A lot of people think the minute you paint a shadow that you want to go for a gray or a black. Well, that's not so. It's always a purple with a blue hue or with a reddish hue, depending on the lighting. So this one I thought would be nice, since we have purple in the sky. I've put purple in here, and again I'm following around all the even the contour of the last wave, where sometimes I have gone over the burnt sienna. I'm adding a little bit more of the purple there to accentuate it. And of course here, right in front of that shadow which is blocking the sun over here, you want them definitely a little bit stronger. Hey little star, we'll be getting around to you next. Yes, let's tickle your little feet there. Oh, the coral rays. Okay, put some shadows there too. So double loading my brush again with water and purple. And touching up where I missed earlier. This is a patience game, actually. This is what I love about painting. It's taught me a lot of patience. It's my therapy. And my husband was very supportive of me painting, and he wants me more and more to create new creations in the way of not just workshops that I can teach, but in something that I really want to paint from my heart. That's going to be just my painting, so that I'll be known more as an artist than as a teacher, although I love both. I love creating, I love sharing. And thanks to Nilda, who has given me this opportunity of painting as one of the teachers for the online painting school. So now I'm going to put in some sun rays kissing the beach. So I'm doing the first one with a little creamy color. I've put warm white with a little bit of the sienna, but it's not going to show up enough. So I'm going to be putting some cream in there. So you stroke them first down with the rake brush and then slightly across, almost like you do shadows, reflections in the water. Those are dark and these are light, but same principle. So now they're showing up much better with a little bit of white, but make sure it's not too much. And then across. And if you do it too often, you might lose them, so go back to it a little bit later. Now do them here and there. You don't have to do them all the way around the edges. So now I'm going straight for the white instead of using the cream, and let's see how it goes. And don't go over the brown. Remember, you need that dark depth there before you come, and of course the wave is also creating the shadow that stopping the sun hitting the shore for that about ½ inch there. Down it comes and across. Experiment with this if you have to, even play a little bit on paper beforehand. Now this is without doing the line at all. I'm just coming straight down with a white, liquid white. I've liquidized it a little bit so it's not too thick, and then across, and that gives you that nice sheen on the sea sand. Okay, little star, we're almost ready. Getting to you next. The starfish is also known as the star of the sea. It's a beautiful shape, as you know, with 5, what I can't say prongs. They are actually called rays, like sun rays. And they're not tentacles either, but they are also known as fingers. So there's 5 of them. The one that you're seeing at the back there is not as visible as the ones facing us. So I'm painting these with a liner brush loaded with naphthol red. And although they have little things on the shell, on the outer shell, almost like little protrusions, this is too small to play around with, so it's just going to be plain red, and then in the middle of its ray it's going to have a little hard line, which I'm going to pick up some burnt umber and do it with that. Black would be too harsh and umber is closer to the red, so just a little liquid umber and come down in the center of each of the rays. They all meet in the middle just like a star. And that's about done. Then we're going to fix up the sea sand around it, and any little smudges there will be corrected with the sea sand. We are now going to switch from the sea to the air and join our friends the seagulls. I have about 9 little birdies up here, and I must confess, You should be doing what I tell you and not what I'm doing when you see me painting them, because I'm actually starting them at the bottom, and I should have started them at the top so there's no danger of smudging, but here I am. So please, when you get to do yours, start with the very furthest one, although acrylic dry pretty quickly. So this is a liner brush that's double loaded. It's got all gray, and then one side has been swiped through the white, titanium white. So basically you're double loading the brush. You hold the gray facing downwards and the white facing up in the sky, and you press at the beginning of the wing, which is wider, and you release that pressure, and you just paint with a few little hairs on the tip when you get to the end of the wing. And if there's any little accidents, like here, the white has ended up squirting at the bottom, I'll fix it up afterwards. Now, the shape of the seagulls, I tell my students, they're very simple. When you're doing them so far away, you don't have to worry about too many details. So it's just a little head, a little body, and two wings. And the wings, depending on whether they're flapping them, flying high, flying low, about to land, they're all slightly different. So remember the shapes. It's like an M and a V basically, and you can alternate them so that they don't all look identical in flight formation. And here I'm cleaning up with a wet brush. I've got a wet round brush in my hand and a paper towel as well. And so where I smudge it, I grab it while it's still fresh and it doesn't do too much harm. If the white is smudging there, it doesn't really matter because there's a cloud right behind it, so you can smudge it into the cloud if you don't want to wash it off. The first two being the closest are obviously more visible, so you can put a head and the body on them. When it gets to the others, it's very hard to tell, so you don't have to go into so much detail. And once you get the hang of it, they're the easiest things to do, and they put such a final effect into a painting that most of my friends laugh, because when they see me painting the Manatee River here or a seascape, they all sit there holding their breath and say, "Where are the three little birds?" I normally put just three, depending how busy the painting is. This one here, on the original one, it had 5, and then the next one I painted it at 7, and this one ended up having 9. It's always got to be an odd number. Don't ask me why. Some artist way back in the Middle Ages decided that things in painting should never be an even number. Petals, wings, trees, whatever, it's always got to be an odd number. Of course, my husband, being a scientist, always proved me wrong. He would go out and pick some flowers in the fields, come back with a bunch of weeds, and sure enough, he had found flowers with 4 petals, 6 petals, 8 petals, and he said, "See?" So I guess one of these days I'll be rewriting that rule. Here again, I had lost some of the white, so it's easier to go in with just gray when it gets to that small, and then reload your brush just with white, because it's very difficult to try and keep it double loaded when you're just using the very, very tip, and then go over and highlight with the white. Excuse my hand in the way. And then strengthen that one again. And voila! The birds are done. Just a tiny little body there, tiny little body there, little one there, just a touch, just a tiny indication. But if you're nervous about it, just leave them out. Then we have another look at the painting, see if anything else needs doing, touching up. And I guess we're done. Finger painting, last touch there. And we're ready to go. So, time to sign your name. I have chosen the right hand corner since it had some space there. You can even put a little seashell next to it. Make it part of your signature. I hope you have enjoyed this painting experience with me. I really look forward to having you join me on the next online painting school production. I'm going to be painting in oils on the next one, so hope to see you around. Thank you for sharing today with me, and God bless. Bye bye for now.